What's up, world history? Hope everything is going good. Hope you have continued to keep up with your e-learning. And this week, in this video, just to lay some stuff out for you of what we're going to be getting into. We're going to be starting Chapter 11, Part 2, which is going to cover Chapter 11, Section 4, 5, and 6. We have already done the key terms, so now we're going to look in a little bit deeper into the detail of the sections. Your first assignment, which will be this Monday, and will be due Tuesday by 11:59, are going to be Chapter 11.4 notes. On Wednesday, you will have Chapter 11.5 guided reading, and that will be due by Thursday at 11:59. If you have any questions about anything, please email me. I will have a copy of the section for Section 5 for the guided reading in the assignment. So if you can't log on to your ebook, you'll have that avenue as well. Then we will get into Chapter 11, Section 6 the following week, as Friday will be kind of as now for planning and catching up on work. One other thing, do not forget to continue to submit your daily attendance and answer the question and get it back to me within 48 hours, please, or just get it to me as quick as possible so we can make taking attendance as smooth as possible. Other than that, again, drop me a question if you have any, or any concerns that you might have as well. When we do these notes on Google Classroom, I'm going to have a link to the YouTube video, and that is where you will be getting your notes from. And now with the notes, I will have anywhere from 2 to 3 questions that I will put on the notes so that you can answer, and they're basically review questions. All right, let's get into it. All right, this is going to be Chapter 11, Section 4, European Colonies in North America. First, let's start off with New France. We have, in the early 1500s, the French crossing the Atlantic for cod off of Canada, which will become New France. Now, by 1534, Jacques Cartier is going to discover the St. Lawrence River and claim eastern Canada for France. What we'll also see is French explorers and fur traders starting to travel inland with the help of Native American allies, looking for support against rival Native American groups. And of course, religion will follow as well. The Jesuits and other missionaries will soon follow these explorers in. And they're going to advance into the wilderness, trying with not so much success in converting Native Americans that they will meet to Christianity. And we've kind of talked about this issue with the absolutism of what Christianity presents as a religion. Also, we'll get the first permanent French settlement in 1608 in Quebec, when Samuel de Champlain will establish this colony. We'll have wealthy landlords that will buy these huge tracts of areas of land along the St. Lawrence River as well, and they'll be looking for settlers to farm the land, but the problem is the Canadian climate. Long winters that will attract few French peasants. Now, many who went to New France will soon abandon farming and look for a little bit more profitable venture, which is going to be fur trapping. And we see the soaring European demand for fur will ensure that this will always, for the most part, be lucrative. Now, we get to King Louis XIV, who is going to send more soldiers and women settlers as he's looking for a little bit more revenue or boost to his income from taxes from this overseas empire, and he's going to look to appoint officials to oversee economic activities in New France. But also, too, like we said, sending these settlers, soldiers, and women as well to North America. But even though King Louis is Catholic, he will prohibit Protestants from settling in New France as well. By the early 1700s, we have French forts, missions, and trading posts going from Quebec to Louisiana, and the population with that is still growing. Yet the population of New France is still going to remain small compared to that of some English colonies that are starting to expand along the Atlantic coast. All right, let's move to the 13 English colonies. We'll start with the first permanent English colony that'll be in Jamestown, Virginia in 1607. In its early years are going to be filled with disaster. Many of these settlers will die of starvation and disease. Will even throw some cannibalism in there as they are just trying to survive. And a lot of these early colonies are very reliant on supplies coming from the homeland. And when those supplies don't make their destination, we have events like this happen. Now, let's move to another colony. Well, let me say this real quick as well, and we're going to see this in both of these colonies. The Native Americans are going to allow the remaining populations to be able to survive this winter as they show them where resources are and how to grow crops in this kind of climate. Now, moving to Plymouth, In 1620, we see another group of English settlers landing at Plymouth, Massachusetts, and they will be the Pilgrims, or English Protestants, who will be rejecting the Church of England. Now, they will seek religious freedom rather than commercial profit. So before coming ashore, what they have to establish is the Mayflower Compact, in which they will kind of hash out the guidelines for governing the North American colony. A compact, if you don't know, is an agreement among people. Today, we also use this document as an important early step forward in self-government. And many pilgrims, just like what we saw in Jamestown, will die in the early years of their Plymouth colony. And again, we will have local Native Americans that will teach them how to grow corn and help them survive in this new land. And then what we'll see a little bit later on is a new wave of English Protestant immigrants that will arrive to establish the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Now, other colonies will be founded as commercial ventures for profits and others for gifts from the king. Some that we see are Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Maryland will be set up as havens for persecuted religious groups. We see that Virginia and New York are commercial ventures and organized for profit. Geographic conditions are obviously going to dictate how these commercial ventures profit, but also how economies will be established depending on the climate in which these colonies are in. So geographic conditions will kind of shape the life of the New England, middle, and southern colonies. So at first, it's a struggle. They have to try to survive any way they can. And very early on, they have the understanding that it is survival and it's not for benefit or commercialism or anything or profit or anything like that. And especially when you compare it to the Spanish, who had a little bit of that success in Mexico and Peru. And instead, they'll try to learn how to create wealth by using the resources that are native around their surroundings. So what we see in the New England colonies is the timber, the fishing, and shipbuilding. You have all that timber, you might as well use that industry for shipbuilding, and especially since this is such a fresh colony, but also use your advantage. You're on the coast, and fishing would be a great advantage for that. The middle colonies are going to grow large quantities of grain and be kind of that grain belt that we start to see. And because they have a lot more abundance of land for growing, that'll be utilized as well. And then the southern colonies will have a plantation economy emerge, and we'll have cash crops like rice and tobacco that will grow well in a little bit warmer climate, and they will develop this plantation economy to grow these crops. Now, with a plantation economy, the way that will be beneficial, most profitable, will be by utilizing some kind of free labor. So at first they will try to utilize Native Americans. The problem is disease and lack of immunity that will decimate Native American populations in the Americas in general as when the Europeans come over. Now, the only other avenue they have is going to Africa, where there has been established slave trade going on, especially in the Swahili city states in the east, but also coming over in the west as well. And so they will start to utilize captured Africans that will be sold into slavery and become African slaves that will be shipped over through the Middle Passage into the Americas, going into places of North, Central, and South America. So we will have several colonies in the South that will have enslaved Africans and build this economy basically off of slavery and free labor. Now, when we move a little bit to the English colonies as far as government goes, most will enjoy some type of self-rule with representation. We will see each colony having its own representative assembly elected by men who own property that advise the governor and make decisions on local issues. The tradition of consulting representative assemblies is going to grow out of the English experience. We'll see going back to the 1200s, Parliament will begin to play an important role in English affairs, and slowly too the English citizens will start to gain certain legal and political rights, and English American colonists are expecting to enjoy the same rights. When colonists later protest the British policies in North America, they view themselves as a free-born Englishmen who are defending just the traditional rights that they've known and grown up with. Now, the map that you see pictured here from the European colonization of North America, about 1700, you'll see North America there pictured, with Central America there as well, and you can see the Viceroyalty of New Spain there in the orange, going through Central America and into Florida and in the Caribbean as well. And then if you look to the northeast, you can see in the green, these are the 13 English colonies in which we are talking about, spanning basically the coasts of the present-day United States. And then you can see the French in the purple there up in the north, all throughout eastern and central Canada. All right, let's finish this up with the last section, which will be a power struggle that begins since we now have all of these colonies in play. By the 1600s, Spain, France, England, and the Netherlands will have colonies in North America. They'll all begin to fight, and both in the colonies and around the world, to protect and try to expand their interest. We see by the late 1600s, the French claims will include present-day Canada as well as much of the present-day central United States. The Spanish had moved north, trying to make claims to present-day Texas and Florida, while the English and Dutch will maintain colonies along the East Coast. Native Americans throughout these colonies are going to enter into the conflict in trying to play the Europeans against one another, because why not use them against one another instead of fighting them outright? And especially when there's already bad blood and rivalries, let them kill themselves. So what we'll have then is by the 1700s, the British and French will emerge as the most bitter of rivals and striving for power around the globe. Their clashes in Europe will ignite conflicts in the Caribbean, North America, India, and Africa. We see in 1754, fighting will break out between the French and the British in North America. This will become known as the French and Indian War. By 1756, that regional conflict is going to link to the 7 Years' War in Europe, and that war is soon going to spread to other parts of the world like India and other areas. Now, although the French are going to hold more territory in North America than the British colonies have more people, and that will be a big deciding factor as well. Trappers, traders, and farmers from the British colonies are going to push west into the Ohio Valley and start to claim lands that the French had. Now, the French, who had forged alliances with the Native Americans, are going to fight to oust the intruders, and this was a really terroristic style of fighting, because it was making sure that people didn't settle out in the frontier, and a lot of people are going to be somewhat fearful of moving out into the frontier areas because of the atrocities that are happening between the French and Indians and the British as well, and almost scare tactics like this is what's going to happen when you move out here. And it was a bloody conflict, and especially on the frontier lines in other parts of the world. Now, during the war, the British soldiers and the colonial troops are going to launch campaigns against the French in Canada and on the Ohio frontier. We see in 1759 the British will capture the capital of New France, which will be Quebec, and then Montreal. And then even though those are captured, the war is still going to drag on until 1763, and then the British will finally win control over Canada. In 1763, we see the Treaty of Paris that will officially end the worldwide war and ensure that the British dominance in North America will be the dominant person or colonies in North America. France will cede all of Canada and its lands east of the Mississippi River to Britain. It handed the Louisiana Territory over to Spain. Now, however, France did regain the rich sugar-producing inlands in the Caribbean and the slave-trading outposts in Africa that the British had seized during the war, as sugar is becoming more and more of a cash crop, and a lot of the driver of African slavery that we see coming across the Middle Passage. Now, in the last slide that I have here, just to give you a little bit of a comparison, you see European lands claimed in North America. North America, you see there 1750, and then North America in 1763. You can see the green has significantly moved all over the east side of the map. You can see the Indian Reserve there across the red line, this proclamation line of 1763. You can see Quebec there, the British colonies, and then you can see the Spanish claims in Spanish Louisiana that have now grown up and have kind of ate up a lot of the French holdings. And you can see that the Spanish have now gone from Central North America all the way through Central America and into New Granada and South America. So the colonies have been moving. We've had some violence, and the map in the United States with the colonies or pre-United States is now starting to shape up in what we know before the American Revolution.